Welcome to Doc NYC's Spring Showcase, our mid-year celebration of documentary films and series. My name is Murtada Elfadl, and I am a programmer at Doc NYC, and it is my pleasure to be speaking with the team of Number One on the Call Sheet, the new series from Apple TV Plus. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation this today. And I want to start about the sort of genesis of this program, of this show, and if you can tell me a little bit about what was the sort of first germ of idea behind trying to make Number One on the call sheet. Maybe we can start with the EPs, Nanette or Mishka.
I think the person to start with would be Datari.
All
Yeah,
right,
the
those
idea originated from me. It was an idea that I had really back in 2017, as someone who has made a lot of films and been in the business a long time. I would always see young actors come in, have great moments, and not be able to sustain their careers. Like somewhere along the line, they would lose their way, or there was a prominent black actor in the 2000s who came out. He was a leading man in so many movies, and then all of a sudden it just went away, and he ended up, number three on a TV show, 7 years later. And I would always wonder about that and just be like, how, because so many of us as people of color, we come into this business, we don't have mentors, where a lot of us are first generation successful. And so really the idea was to make a movie where it would be a blueprint for generations to come, right? Like, so many, how do you sustain a career? Stay a movie star for 20 or 30 years, like the Denzels and Halleys and Jamies, right? And so, I put together some materials. I called my partner Jamie Foxx, who wasn't even my partner at the time, when we started the process, and called Reggie Hudlin, and called Kevin Hart. And one of my dear friends worked at Apple at the time, and we put the room together and we sold both of the movies.
Wow. When I look at the sort of, especially for this episode, the wonderful names that you have brought on, Alfre Woodard, Angela Bassett, Whoopi Goldberg, like these are amazing women that I sort of grew up watching. I think a lot of American people learned how to behave from watching them on TV and on the screen. So, it's true. And so I want to ask you, how did you get their buy-in, and how did you sort of like, I think if you look at the whole roster of names, you haven't missed anyone, maybe um, throughout the sort of from who are still with us. Everybody is on this show. So can you talk about getting all these people behind the show?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that too. I think it was an interesting thing on the woman's film because we didn't have a talent booker on the movie, and so pretty much all of the women were, us having to beg, borrow, and steal, and work behind the, work through schedules and calling. A lot of these women, we called directly. Myself, Jamie, and when we sold the movies, the first two people that we attached as executive producers were Halle Berry and Angela Bassett. And they said yes and loved the idea. And from there, over the course of the almost 5 years, we had to work around very challenging schedules because all of these women are leading women, right? They're movie stars. So um, that's how we went about it.
I mean,
Um,
one of
but
my fondest moments though is the early part of development after, I mean, it's like Dan and Datari are next to each other right now, and that call from Dan and Datari, like, we have this project, you're basically gonna have to do it, as a director for the women's film. And I was like, oh, celebrities. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's such an opportunity to do something amazing here, because
Mhm,
this is a once in a lifetime opportunity that
mhm,
I I had done a short on Cicely Tyson, and I had talked to her about doing something similar, and she was like, "Oh no, you're not. You're not going to use my name and try and bring all these people in." That the politics around and the scheduling is massive, and so there's a
Yeah.
reason it hasn't been done before. Like, wouldn't it have been amazing to have it for the 70s, for the 80s, for the 90s? We don't. We have it now, and I think a lot of it has to do with a good idea, right, Datari? But also you had these incredible Black production companies to go to who were powerhouses, Jamie Foxx's and Kevin Heartbeat, Kevin Hart. And that you collectively go to Apple, and then, you know, bringing in Dan Cogan and Story Syndicate, Liz Garp, like, you know, documentary royalty to be
Yeah.
like, okay, we want to make sure the production is tight, getting the directors, and then for me to be able to pull in, you know, producers that I want to work with on the ground, Mishka and Nanette, and like build that creative team. It was just beyond exciting and beyond hard, but so worth it. Do you know what I mean?
But also the women, all these women, they want to tell their stories, you know, and I think that's something that Datari knew, that it's not just wanting to share, it's they also want to share. And I think that's what makes the film and both the films so special, is because you're hearing things that are not shared. It's an intimacy that was achieved that is rare, and that feeling, that energy is really palpable and really carried us.
And
The one thing I would say too, like, you know, to Shala's point, like we would have extensive conversations for hours and hours and hours about the women and the women we were selecting. Because again, like, you know, you got to work within budget constraints and schedules. And there were some women that, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about that unfortunately we couldn't include. But you know that it you know it's tough because you know you got to work within budget constraints, right? Like, so you know we would have wanted to add a few other people, but we couldn't go to South Africa, or we couldn't go, we had to wait, you know, for the schedules to open up. So yeah, it was a lot of conversation behind that though, for sure.
It was like film history school. It was so fun. Like that's one of the the big memories I want to take away from the project.
And it shows on the screen. And one of the things that I really liked about it is that you show each of these women sort of coming into the studio, and then you capture a little bit of their energy in like just dealing with the setup, with the room, and also just sort of choosing what clips, I'm sure there were many, to show. But the thing that struck me is that everybody's personality shines through. So maybe one of you can talk about how that came together, because that's one of the things that distinguishes the show.
So I don't think of it as a show, so I don't mean to be particular. I think of it as a document, like a, you know, and what was amazing is we could tell, Reggie and I had the opportunity to tell two different stories under the umbrella of number one on the call sheet, and it's not an episodic. So, but I think for me, I'm not a celebrity. You know what I mean? I'm not calling up somebody, and so it was really important as a documentary filmmaker to create the set and the stage and the vibe in the room from the look, which was very Annie Leibovitz at work meets Vanderzee. You know, like I wanted portraiture, and to
Yeah.
crack that veneer of celebrity, that like all these people did all of this work to have that woman there on that day. And so I took very seriously the responsibility of the interview, and to listen and be in the moment and follow up, and to be able to get those moments, because there were no do-overs.
Yeah.
I could not imagine having to call up Datari and Dan and be like, well, I don't know if I nailed it. Can we do it again on Tuesday? You know, that wasn't happening.
One of the things that I
And
also,
just, sorry, I just wanted to say to your point of there are quite a few women in the film. And one of the things I'm most proud of is you see each of their personalities. And the way that was done was hard work, right? Like in the edit, it was a feat to give each woman their moment, right? And make each one shine. That was important.
and maybe Mishka, that's my next question was going to be about the edit process. I'm sure you had a lot of footage And sort of if you or someone else can talk about sort of finding the film, the documentary within the, the lots of footage that you had. What was the process? How long did it take you? What were sort of some of the things that you had top of mind? Like, we need to capture this from this person, or just tell me about that process, because I'm sure it was long and arduous, but the result is amazing.
Well, I mean, you always go in with a plan for these interviews and you come out with what you come out with. And each woman surprised us. And I think the editing was so hard because the idea was very the ensembleness, the four color girls, right? I wasn't trying to say this woman, I wasn't trying to rank them on the call sheet. They're all number one. And so it was really difficult in the edit. And I think that we nailed it finally after some tough times, and bringing in Aaron Barnett, who understood what I was trying to do and was able to translate that through craft. I mean, I feel like when you're a director, you're the conductor of an incredible orchestra. Like, I don't play the cello, but I know when it is killing, right? And so it's the energy and the vibe of that. And so we are really proud with how Apple TV stayed behind us through those moments, how Dan and Datari stayed with us, through those moments, and working through. And that's the process. I mean, has anybody ever made a documentary film or a film and it been easy? Like, no, it's
I
not.
would also say that, this is the most difficult kind of film. I don't know that you feel it when you're watching it. What you feel when you're watching it is the intensity of being in right in the presence of these characters and experience them as human beings. And there's incredible emotional intensity and extraordinary stories, and you're carried along from one to the next. But the genre that this falls in is really the essay film. There's no plot. There's no obvious beginning, middle, and end to a story of 20 different women in this industry. And so Shola really had to come up with a theme and a narrative that was a set of ideas and then execute on that. And that is the most difficult kind of documentary filmmaking. And it took a while. But we kept at it, and Shola had a vision in her head, and we were finally able to get it on the screen. And it was beautiful.
It shows on the screen.
I would
I'm
also just
sorry.
add, sorry, I just want to add that also, um, you're right. We had so much footage and an embarrassment of riches that no one will see. I mean, it's just when you have such gems and so many of them, Shallow is really able to really get the gold. So it's really hard. I think that part also because the movie couldn't be 4 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we were very lucky.
Yeah, Shola, I want to go back to something you said earlier when you said it was like capturing the history of film. And I think what also struck me about this documentary is that it starts in chronological order. Like, you start with Whoopi at the beginning and sort of like, and then you go, but then you go back, and then suddenly it's not as straight as that. You're zigzagging, you're going back, you're going into the future. So can you talk about sort of finding that chronology? You want to tell a particular story about a particular time, but also you want to tell a bigger, fuller story about everyone and what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, part of it was when we got Whoopi, everything changed for me. Like, I was trying very hard to do things thematically and like blah, 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 and whatever, and then we got Whoopi to stand for an interview, and I was like, oh my gosh, the goat! Like, she, Cicely Tyson is gone. We have Whoopi, and to anchor it loosely chronologically that way gave us a methodology. But then there were certain things about the business you had to know, right? To me, to understand kind of the fluttering of this, that, and the other thing you hear on social media. So all of these women love their business, they love their craft, but they also see things that could change and they can change. And so they're not complainers and whiners. I didn't want the feeling of the film to be that. They love what they do and it's inspiring. They're in their purpose. And so, like, the thing that I came away with, which I had no idea, I was inspired. And so the film is focused on those moments with each woman that surprised me in a certain sense, right?
Mm.
And you learn something. And by being inspired, I like, I'm constantly asking myself, am I being number one on my call sheet? Like it translates to like good posture and an attitude and a way of walking through the world. And I do have to call myself out on this because I fought Datari particularly about the title. I was like, this is the stupidest title ever. It's inside baseball. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, it ties the two films together and it's a thing. And, who wants to say HNIC? That's too old fashioned. So now we can say number one on the call sheet and it's not, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for admitting that, Shala.
Publicly, Datari.
Always knew that that was the perfect title. And truthfully, again, it's so hard for, actors of color to rise to number one on the call sheet and again,
Mhm.
stay there, right? Like that's a very hard thing. Usually, there's great actors that we all know and love who have made a career at being the supporting actor to the huge white movie star, right? And so, you have to be intentional about, reaching that status. You can't just come into business and say, "Oh, I want to act. I can out act everybody." Like you have to be intentional. Like no one's gonna go to the NBA or join a team and the team not have the goal of winning a championship, right? Like
Yeah.
so, we have to want that for ourselves. The other thing I would say too, it's very hard to make a film about people that are very famous. Like it is because we've all seen these biopics where you said, what else did I learn that I didn't already know? Right? These people have been interviewed thousands and thousands of times. So I think going back to an earlier question you said about the editing process, it's like, you want these movies to be informative. You want them, you want people to get nuggets and learn things that they had no idea about. One that stands out is that Whoopi, a lot of those bigger roles, which I knew that, but like they were designed for other people. Most black movie stars, all of these roles, all of their roles, the Denzels, they were designed for other people and sometimes white actors. So
Or I was that was one of the things I definitely learned. Like one of her films, I think it was Fatal Beauty, was supposed to be Bruce Willis. So Whoopi really changed the conversation there, not just from white female actors, but she got also at least one Bruce Willis part.
Well,
Um,
what Viola says about moldy clay, you take a part in moldy clay. Whoopi exemplifies because she could have been like, "There's no room for me. This is you want me to play what?" But she took her ability to fill the shoes of Bruce Willis or Bette Midler or whoever, or Shelley
yeah.
Long, and and turned it into an opportunities.
Mhm.
That's the mindset that is throughout both
Yeah.
films. Like, okay, what's my route?
One of the things I loved is also you devoted a large part of the last section of the film to talking about the Best Actress Oscar and to what you were saying, Datari. I think the quote that stuck in my mind is Taraji P. Henson when she says, "They give us supporting actress like they give out candy cane." But only Halle Berry, of course, won Best Actress, although other people have nominated. I mean, Viola Davis, if there is a leading lady, it should be Viola Davis. But anyway, so can you talk about making that choice and sort of bringing the story in together to tie in with your themes about who's number one on the call sheet?
well, the Oscar thing in particular, like I'll just Dan is one of those, who's part of this conversation. I think so much of it is the studio, right? Like you got to spend the money to put the campaign together. And I think a lot of times, I mean, you just mentioned Viola actually was Best Actress in Fences. She was the leading lady, right? But here's the thing though, if the studio is going to spend millions and millions of dollars for an Oscar campaign, they're going to sit the actor down with their team and say, hey, you have a better chance to win best supporting. If we're gonna put all this money behind a campaign, this is a better. Even though you are best actress, I mean Zoe Saldana was the lead in the movie that she won this year for. She really was. She was in more scenes than the other actress that got a nomination for being a lead. She was the lead of the movie, but you know you're not going to win that, or like your chances are slim. So you do want an Oscar, right? So you're like, hey, if the studio is sitting you down and telling you, hey, you got a great chance to win supporting, we're gonna put all the chips, push the chips to the middle of the table to get you that Oscar. You're still like, hey, I want an Oscar. Like, so you take what you sort of, like, that's it makes sense in so many ways. It is a lesser competition sometimes in that category. And you look at a lot of the greatest white actresses of all time that don't have, what's the Glenn Close doesn't have an Oscar, right? Like, so it is, a lot of it is just political, man. It's not.
And Datari makes a very good point. However, as the filmmaker thinking about the story, it was a great device and marker to use. Where do we fall into? Why are we better suited to be supporting? And so
Mhm.
I wanted to throughout make that argument. And I'm grateful. Like, Imitation of Life as a movie and as a device was really important to me in the storytelling. But
Mhm.
if I had asked Halle Berry if she knew about Imitation of Life and she was like, no, that would have been it, right? So, like, these actresses know the story, and together they really help tell it in a way that I think hopefully brings along the rest of the industry. So that's why Taraji's like, what are you trying to tell me? And we have to ask those questions. That's my job as a filmmaker, to ask the questions. So Datari as a producer is to make sure we get as much hardware as possible. So that's the practical route. But why can't we be Best Actress?
And that's one reason why Gabrielle Union's interview always stands out for me, because her trajectory is, different. And she talks about leaning into Blackness and going a different route, right?
Mhm.
Which stands out from, removes herself from the Oscar chase.
Yeah.
Historically, though, we've always been seen as supporting to the white movie star. Though, again,
Yeah.
if you've seen Viola for 25 years and she's been supporting, which we have, to be honest, right? Like, we know when she's gotten the turn to really be able to lead something, whether it's The Woman King or the movie she's got, the action movie she's got out now. But she hasn't really had that many opportunities to be the lead, if we're being honest.
And that's the point. And I think what everybody in all the films are talking about, and the men are a little bit, they have more production companies, and they're a little ahead on that game. But, like, until we write and until we have more companies and until we are intentional about making that happen, I mean, that will be the way that change comes about. I mean, and honestly, and I think I said this at the top of the call, like, even this film wouldn't have happened without two Black production companies.
Of
Like,
course. Yeah.
Jamie Foxx and Kevin Hart. Like, so it does make a difference when we're here. The questions that are asked and the stories that are told. And we just want to work. That's it. That's it, man. We just want to
Yeah.
We
work.
got to tell our stories. I mean, for you know 70 of the 100 years, white people told our stories. We didn't even tell them, right?
Yeah.
And so, part of the imaging of black people, whether, we're dangerous or we're drug dealers or we're killers, or, a lot of that is started in Hollywood. If you're someone that lives in Wisconsin that didn't grow up around anybody black, your perception of black people are, if you've been watching television for 50 years, is that we're drug dealers and killers and dangerous. And because for a long time those were the roles that we got, or maids, or and so you do have to tell your own stories. I mean, there's no, you just, this movie never gets made. Like, who's going to care about it if you know we don't say, hey, we have to make a movie about being number one and staying number one and being intentional about being number one.
Yeah. Yep, like you said, we have to tell our stories. I want to sort of ask the producers about one of the things that Nia Long starts her interview with. She says, "This is like a therapy session." So I felt that these people were comfortable to talk and talk candidly, and sort of trusted you as producers and as and as a director to sort of represent them well. So can you talk a little bit about creating that environment where somebody comes in and feels comfortable enough? Therapy session is you tell your darkest secrets, right? So can you talk about creating that environment as a team so then you get this result that you got with the film?
Well, I'll just speak to a lot of the women that are in the movie I know personally, have worked with, or Jamie has worked with, or known a very long time. And so I know Nia very well. And, that was a 4 hour conversation before she even agreed to do it. And, there were things that aren't in the movie that I know. And one of them I will share, because I think she would appreciate it. Because it is, agreeing to do something like this too also comes with, if I say the wrong thing, is it gonna hurt me? Is it gonna hurt my career?
Mm.
Nia has been working in this business over 30 years, and she recently got paid $1 million on her first movie just 2 years ago. The movie that Kenya Barris wrote and directed, again, a black man, right, for Netflix. Before that, he fought for her to be paid $1 million on them. I mean, you think about her body of work, like how long she's been working in this business, and you just made $1 million 2 years ago. That's kind of insane, right? And so that was a conversation that we had that's not in the movie, but it was off the record, and she was really like, that's why she said it's a therapy session, because there is some pain and frustration there, with so many of the women and men.
I think that actually this film hasn't been made until now is that it took someone with the history and stature and relationships of Datari to reach out to folks for them to feel comfortable that he was working at the highest level, that he could protect them, and that this was a serious project that they should commit their time and energy to. And, Datari was the guy to do that, and one of the few guys who could do that. And then when you take that introduction to the project and you bring it into the room that Mishka and Nanette and Shola have set up, and the beauty of that room and the sort of jewel box quality of it, and the elevation that what you are going to say is important and you are very special, and everything about that interview setup expresses that to people. And then you have the way that Shola was able, as a great interviewer, to bring that intimacy and to bring that openness out of them, and to get them to speak outside of the things that they would normally say on a press junket about being a celebrity, but really open up as human beings. It takes that kind of team and all of that context to make that happen. And it's one reason a film like this has not been made before. And it's another reason I think they will not be made again anytime soon. Because it takes like 1,000 things to get right and to thread that needle.
Well said, Dan. And Dan's stature too. I mean, he's one of the very best in the business at what he does, and he's got the accolades to show that. And it really was a team of it was the Avengers, man. Like Shala, has made, acclaimed movies about women of color, Angela Davis and Shirley Chisholm, and so, it really was the best of the best at every position.
And just to add, we had Bradford Young come in and help set up that jewel box, right? Because these women care and should be lit properly, right? And just to jump on like Nia asked what light we used because she loved it so much, just down to that detail, very proud of it.
One
And
more Oh, so sorry.
go ahead.
One quick thing to add. It's so joyous to be actually on this call again because we did have so much fun with these kind of calls. So I'm talking a lot, but I'm just remembering too that one of the greatest moments in all of the interviews, it was the most magical, was when the woman would walk in and there's some sort of armor. There's a professional armor that you see, and you see when it cracks and comes down, and I always said to Shala, like, how do you do it? But I think it's a sense of safety, a sense of, look, there's so many Black women here. There's so many people of color here. And Shala was able to do her magic, and it was beautiful when you see that thing drop, because as we were talking about earlier, the desire to tell their stories was in all of the women, very strong, but it's just, is it safe, or how's it going to be? What's it gonna, like Datari said. So it's like Datari got them there, and then when he was there in the room with Shala and all the things, you just actually saw a very tender moment again and again and again. That was really special.
You know, several of them said nobody's ever asked me that before. Right? Like, even Ruth Nega, the question is not always there, right? But I was like, I wanted her to talk about her name, right? And she was like, nobody's ever had the temerity to ask me that. And so there's two things. One, it was a safe space to ask a question, and a follow-up question, but also we were listening. So and often as women and women of color, we're never given the opportunity to talk without being interrupted. So it's all of those things, and then the set was beautiful. Literally, we set the stage, so the light was part of it. But sometimes I have flowers behind, so like we gave them their flowers. We put it on like literally, we gave them their flowers, and yeah. So I mean, so I hope when each one of the women, and we interviewed, first of all, I couldn't believe there were 17 women who were number one on the call sheet, but I hope that they feel seen and heard in the story. And then I hope for all the women who are leading actresses that they feel like the story's theirs too, because it wasn't exclusionary. It wasn't like, oh, this is it was the big picture, but also illuminated through the intimacy of these individual stories.
I think that's a wonderful point to end at. Thank you so much. Thank you to all for joining us today. Please continue to enjoy the Spring Showcase programming through June 13th.
Thank you for having us.